Hi guys, so I'm here with my January reading wrap up. I'm really pleased with everything that I managed to get read in January. I read 11 books, which seems crazy to me, and I had a really good reading month in the sense that I thoroughly enjoyed pretty much everything that I read. Some things more than others, but overall I had a fantastic reading month, so I really can't complain. The first book that I read was on my Kindle, and it was Pestilence by Laura Thassell, I think is how you pronounce her name. And this is book 1 in the Four Horsemen series, and this was one that I kind of stumbled across by accident, downloaded, and on a bit of a whim decided to pick it up, and I'm so glad I did. It is such an unusual book. I found it very unique, a bit odd, but in kind of like a good way. So it's set kind of in sort of the modern times, if you want to put it like that, and basically one day the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse arrive on Earth, and then they kind of disappear for a while, but then the first horseman, Pestilence, re-emerges, and he's basically travelling all over the world and is basically spreading a horrible plague that is, killing millions and millions of people. And then it gets to this woman's town, I think her name was Sarah, and she basically draws the short straw and agrees to try and kill him. And basically the story goes from there. He cannot be killed, which she finds out, and then Pestilence, to punish her, drags her along with him. It's kind of difficult because he treats her kind of badly, and I was like, how are we ever gonna like this guy? But it was a very interesting read, and I personally really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to the next book. It's due out sometime this year, so yeah, really looking forward to that. I would have given this about 4.5 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was One Dance with a Duke by Tessa Dare. This was pretty good. It's a historical romance novel. Read it quite quickly. It was quite cute. I'm enjoying Tessa Dare's books. It was, I don't remember much about it, but it was an enjoyable sort of Regency historical romance novel. I gave it sort of 3 out of 5. It was just okay. It wasn't really on the same level as some of my other historical romances. I have quite a high standard. Like, I know what I like in a historical romance, and I kind of like the same sort of authors, if you know what I mean. So the next 2 books that I read, I couldn't put off reading them any longer, and they're by Maya Banks, and they're Never Seduce a Scot and Highlander Most Wanted. This is book 1 and book 2 in her Montgomery's and Armstrong series. I read her McCabe trilogy last month, or in December, and I loved them so much, and I was like, I can't hold off anymore, I have to read these, so I read them one after the other. I loved both of them. If I had to pick a favourite, it would be this one, Never Seduce a Scot, because I found it quite interesting, because the female protagonist in this is deaf, and I'm thinking, in that sort of historical time period, I think it was handled really well, and I just loved it so much. There is a bit of controversy about the third one because it keeps being pushed back. It currently says that it is due out this year, but it said that last year as well. So yeah, I really do hope that the third book in this comes out this year. And I gave both of these 5 stars. Love them to pieces. The next book that I read, I can't remember who it's by, but I'll put the picture up on screen. Is At the Bride Hunt Ball. Again, this was another historical romance, and it was a new to me author I hadn't read before, but it had mainly positive reviews, so I thought I'd give it a try. And I didn't not like it, I just found it a little bit slow. Didn't really fully find myself immersed in it and rooting for the characters or anything like that. But it was an okay read for me. The next book that I read was 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. This is an interesting book because the book for it was pitched at the same time as the screenplay. So I think the author was basically recruited to write this book. But I think she did a really, really good job. I really enjoyed it. I read it very quickly. I loved it. It's about two teenagers that have cystic fibrosis. They don't get off to the best start when they meet. But the difficult thing for them is that they actually cannot be close to each other because they run the risk of infecting each other and basically killing each other. Really, really enjoyed it. It made me cry at one point. I loved it, and I really look forward to seeing the film. Yeah, I would recommend this one. It's kind of a mix between Fault in Our Stars and Everything. It's kind of that kind of vibe, I would say. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed that, and I gave that 5 out of 5, I think. Yes, I did. Haha. The next book that I read was Darkness Embraced by Tilly Cole. And this is the 7th book in her Hades Hangman series. I always look forward to these books being released. I love this series. It's one of my favourite series of life. I'm slowly but surely collecting the paperbacks to the series. They are quite expensive because I think they're like self-published, so they're about £15 per book for a paperback, so quite expensive, so I can't always justify them, but slowly but surely I am getting them. But yeah, this is the 7th book, and it's Tanner's book. Now, Tanner used to be basically the heir to the KKK. He was known as the White Prince. His father is basically like a senator or governor, I think it's a governor, and he sort of covertly runs the KKK. And Tanner believed in everything, and he was due to, inherit, take over, run the KKK. Then he meets Adelita, and she is Mexican. And to start off with, they hate each other, obviously, they clash, but then they actually fall in love with each other, and obviously it's impossible for them to be together. Her father is, like, what do you call it, a cartel boss, so obviously they're in an impossible situation, and Tanner actually leaves the KKK for her, and he says, hold on, I will come back for you, and then the story goes from there. And oh my god, it was like Romeo and Juliet, but in a motorcycle gang and cartel, and oh my gosh. And every time I don't know why I'm always worried for Tilly Cole's books, because they're always amazing, but I'm always like a little bit apprehensive, like, oh, is it going to be as good as the previous one? And she just always knocks it out of the park. I love her books so much. It was just amazing. We also got some revelations. There were some things that I just totally didn't see coming. She just, loved it. Hands down 5 out of 5. Cannot wait for the next book, which is Viking's book, and he's a bit of a joker in the book, so I'm excited to see sort of what happens with his story. So the next book that I read, or actually the next 3 books that I read this month, were all by the same author. So the first one that I read was Somewhere I'll Find You by Lisa Kleypas. This is the first book in the Capital Theatre duology, and actually the second book in this duology I read first, Because You're Mine, and it kind of reignited or sparked my love for Lisa Kleypas, if you like. I read it October, not last year, the year before. I hadn't gone back and read the first one because I was like, it can't possibly be as good as Because You're Mine, and it wasn't, but I still enjoyed it. What did I give it? I gave it like 4 out of 5. So Julia and Damon were kind of married as children, and they both want to go their separate ways basically, but they don't actually know each other because Julia has gone off and basically hidden. She's rejected like the aristocratic life, and she's become an actress, and she goes by a completely different name, so Damon actually can't find her to get the marriage dissolved, but when he comes across Jessica, he is enthralled by her, and basically he thinks that he wants to make her his mistress, but then he starts to have feelings for her, but he actually doesn't know that she's actually his wife, Julia. It was quite an interesting premise. I liked that idea. I just feel like I didn't 100% feel the connection between the two. It was almost like told and not shown in some instances, because he's very overbearing. And sometimes you like that in a hero, sometimes you don't. But overall I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the second one. The second one I think will always be my favourite. But there we go. And then I also decided to read after that Prince of Dreams by Lisa Kleypas. This is the second book and I can't remember what it's called. I don't know if it's the Stokehurst duology, but this is the second book. The first book is Midnight Angel, which I read a good while ago. I think I read it after I read Because You're Mine, so like October 2 years ago or something. And so yeah, this is the second book, and this one was very interesting because Nicholas is Russian. He's been exiled from Russia and he's been obsessed with Emma since she was young. You don't really know why, he's just kind of drawn to her. So then when she kind of becomes older and is like basically on the marriage mark and he sees that she's interested in someone, he basically puts a stop to that. He manipulates her life until the point that she actually agrees to marry him. But then he's a bit afraid of his feelings for her, so he intentionally hurts her, intentionally pushes her away. And then there's kind of like a time travel / dream section of this book where he kind of travels back in time and is in the body of his ancestor who has this great love, and then when he comes back to his own body he realizes the error of his ways. So it was interesting for that. It was a bit different. I just feel like the hero for the majority of this book was really quite unlikable, and he does some things in this book that I don't like in my romance novels. But overall it still kind of redeemed itself a little bit, so I'd give it about the 3.5 out of 5 mark. And then the last book that I read was Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. This is the first book in the Hathaway series. I really enjoyed this. It was just so good. I give it 5 out of 5. Amelia Hathaway is kind of the eldest sister. Her brother is the oldest, but she's the oldest sister, and she takes responsibility for her family. Basically, she wants to keep them all safe, wants to keep them all well. So she's very, not strict, but just sensible head of the family. And then she meets Cam, and he is a gypsy. Obviously the two shouldn't go together, but for some reason they do. So yeah, really love this book, and I'm really looking forward to delving into the rest of this series. It's one I've not put off, but have kind of put off reading because I kind of knew that I would end up binge reading them, and I think that's what's going to happen. So 5 out of 5 for this one. So yeah, that is everything that I read this month. Like I said, really enjoyed my reading month. There were some nice surprises in there, like 5 Feet Apart and Pestilence. They were like surprise reads for me. So yeah, had a really good reading month. So yeah, if you've read any of these books, as always, let me know in the comments down below. If I've added any of these books to your wish list, also let me know. So yeah, I'll see you all soon. Happy reading.